It's 7 p.m. on the dot, so we're going to get started. And so we'll start with the flag salute. If everyone will please rise. All right, and I'll call roll. Jerry Bibles-Vogel. Present. Gabriela Arellanes.
I am here today.
Adrian Greer.
Here.
Yolanda Rodriguez Peña.
Here.
And I myself, Shiloni Cruz Gonzalez. We're all here. All right. Next item, approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Motion by Jerry Bibles-Vogel, seconded by Adrian Greer. Any discussion? Seeing none, place your votes, please. Motion passes 5-0. Moving on, we have items from the floor, public comment. Anybody wishing to address the board may do so now. I see one blue card. Excuse me? Oh, I thought that was later on. Okay. Before that, we'll do item 5.0, report of closed session matters. So I will read out the report. The board met in closed session on agenda item 3.1, existing litigation. As part of closed session, the board approved on a 5-0 vote, 1, a settlement agreement and mutual general release between the Azusa Unified School District and Rosedale Land Partners 2, LLC, and 2, an amended and restated joint communities facilities agreement between the City of Azusa for and on behalf of the Community Facilities District number 2005-1 of the City of Azusa, Rosedale Land Partners 2, LLC, and Azusa Unified School District. These two agreements will resolve all of the issues in the current litigation entitled Azusa Unified School District versus Monrovia Nursery Company et al., case number BS 157058. As part of the settlement, the City of Azusa's Community Facilities District number 2005-1 will issue bonds. The district will be entitled to receive $7.25 million for the district facilities projects. The board authorized superintendent to execute the settlement agreement and mutual general release and the amended and restated joint communities facilities agreement. The City of Azusa will be considering these agreements on November 18th, 2019. Copies of the settlement agreement and mutual general release and amended restated joint community facilities agreement will be available at the district office, and I believe we'll be taking another vote of ratification at the next meeting, correct? No, we're not. All right. So with that, kind of a momentous occasion. We'll see after the City Council passes the actual agreement in 2 weeks. But with that, that would settle our Rosedale lawsuit and bring $7.25 million into the school district. So with that, we'll move on to the next item, and that is item 6.0, public comment. So I did see one blue card. You gave it, you passed it to me. So this is from Barbara Dickerson.
Good evening, Board. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you about citrus. I haven't been before you for a while, so I have a couple of things. I have our accolades for 2019 to leave copies with you so that you can share those with your constituents and people in your circle of influence. I also wanted to bring to, and I'll go over a couple of those highlights, but I also wanted to ask the board to alert us, me, to those graduates who are going on to Citrus. Last year, it seemed like you celebrated your four-year ongoing students, and we'd like to celebrate those who are coming to us as well. We know that those who come to us, especially if they participate in the Promise program, are guaranteed a slot at a Cal State, and they typically finish faster than those who enter as freshmen 4 years. So we would like to make sure that those students are celebrated as well. I also wanted to bring to your attention the HAW, which is the on-campus auditorium. Many of you know about it, but there are some unique things coming. In November, the Temptations are coming. There's a fall dance concert. In December, there's Christmas Is. So if you're interested, please go online and take advantage of those opportunities. Also, we've been talking with our districts, with our K-12 districts, about FAFSAs, and I know that one of the schools, I'm not sure if both the high schools have that as a requirement now, that your students fill out the FAFSA. So at least that's what I was told by a Gladstone student, so I don't know if that's true for both schools, but anyway, they thought they had a requirement. So we would like to encourage that, because whether students are coming to us or going to a four-year institution, that FAFSA is critical to their securing funds at the private schools or the public schools, and it helps the schools better determine their needs. So we encourage students to do that. And also, I've had some conversations with students in the district or in the city, and so the conversation goes something like, well, I'm going to go and major in X. And my question to them, which I think all of our questions to them should be, so what do you plan to do with that degree? Because it's not about attaining the degree only, it's about the workforce. It's like, what are you going to do? What do you see yourself doing with that? Some of our students are not aware of how their degree may or may not help them get to the place that they'd like to go. So they may say, I'm doing psychology because I'm going to help people, help the homeless. Well, that's better a social work degree. So we kind of really need to help students think about the degree leading into the workforce. And finally, on the side notes, I want to thank you for your participation in LACSTA, which is the only, I think, LA County is the only K-14 district that has a conversation going between all of its trustees, the community college people, and the K-12 people. I don't think another community county in the district does that. So thank you for sending your COB. He was there and heard about fiscal responsibility and what the fiscal indicators were, as were board member Rodriguez Pena. So thank you for that. And finally, I'm out of time. So let me just say that for the first, we were the only California community college nationally recognized for student success this year in 2019. And you have other accolades here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Dickerson. Just so you know, the timer got frozen, so you got a little more than 3 minutes, but it's okay. It was good information. All right. So we'll move on now to item 7.1, and this is Azusa Unified School District Success Drivers. So on occasion, we'll have board meetings called study sessions where we dive deeply into areas that we're focusing on as a school district, and so this is one such meeting. We'll be focusing, and I'll let Arturo to introduce this, our Deputy Superintendent.
There you go. Okay, cool. Welcome, Board President Shalene Cruz Gonzalez, board members and audience. We are very excited to be here tonight to present to you our AUSD success drivers that have been guiding our professional learning. Before we dive into the content, I do want to take some time to introduce our team. We have Vicki Davis, who is an ELA teacher at Azusa High School. Yay, Vicki. We have Donna Martin, who is our newest member to the team. She's a fourth grade teacher at Magnolia. Eddie Lotz, who is not here with us tonight, is the resource teacher at Hodge Elementary. Alicia Broxma is our middle school ELA ELD teacher on special assignment. We have Kimberly Dom, who is our high school ELA, ELD teacher on special assignment. Sam Perdomo, who could not be here tonight, principal at Foothill Middle School. Dana Mitchell, who is our director of curriculum and instruction. And we have a nice guest. Technically, if you want to say he's not part of the team, but is super part of the team, we are very happy to have Ashley Chung Dooley, who is a program manager. You want to stand up, Ashley? Say hello. From California Ed Partners, and she doesn't know yet, but she has a piece at the end where she's going to come up and talk about how Azusa's doing. So you hear it from her. To our audience members, we do have all of the handouts that we're going to be using today located at the back of the table. If you'd like to get a package and follow along and participate, because we do plan to make this an engaging process today. So before we begin into too much, we want to just take a little bit of time to explain the journey that we have been on. So this journey is about how Azusa Unified School District has been able to scale up the learning that we have been participating in from our first California Language and Learning Innovation, which we call CALI, which happened in the 15-16 school year. Seems like a very long time ago. How we assembled a CALI leadership team, which I introduced today. How we moved to prototype teachers, pilot teachers, and then district-wide implementation beginning last year in our 18-19 school year. So at the CALI convenings, which we do about 3 a year, they challenged us to identify high leverage learning practices that would lead to higher student achievement, especially for our second language learners. They challenged us by asking us questions. They challenged us by putting the data in front of us. They challenged us by trying to be honest with what we were looking at and coming up with more questions than we had answers. They made us dive deep into our data, analyze those results, and try to get a real deep understanding of what we were looking at. Through this process, the team was led to the speaking and listening standards as an area of need for our district. Those standards encompass constructive, effective arguments. They encompass discerning a speaker's key points by being able to ask clarification, asking relevant questions, and building on others' ideas. It encompasses using complex academic language, taking in mind your audience, and it encompasses being able to use teachers, peers, and text as resources to support their thinking. We knew that we needed a high leverage, evidence-based instructional strategy that would serve many, many purposes. Something that could be implemented system-wide, something that wasn't just for ELA teachers, but it could be for kindergarten, can be for high school, can be for middle school, can be for math, can be for language arts, can be for PE. Something that would serve as a conduit for students' academic discourse and provide all students with a way to use academic language. We knew that that strategy that we would land on would be used to elevate the level of rigor and cognition district-wide. As we were going through this process, we had many thought partners at our convenings, again, pushing, asking questions, trying to build what we were working on so that it was stronger and clearer as we approached a landing spot.
So the great reveal, as a result of the convenings, multiple conversations, our research, we landed on that high-impact instructional strategy, think, pair, share. However, in order for this strategy to be highly effective, all three components need to be identified explicitly and enacted intentionally. The think, protected time for participants, for students to think independently. The pair, time for students to engage in that authentic discussion that builds up an idea, that deepens their understanding and refers to textual evidence to support their ideas. And then the share, a time to share out our ideas as a learning community after the pair. However, as we continued to refine our strategy and focus on the standards, we realized that merely having students think and pair and share presented a risk if we did not anchor this strategy in the context of rigor and complexity. So as a result, we launched Complex Think, Pair, Share, which we like to call CTPS, as one of our key district-wide instructional strategies. So in embarking on this, we designed a 6-day systematic approach to district-wide professional learning, anchored in research, and built around the strategies that we learned at our convenings. To give you an overview of these 6 days, I call your attention to the blue handout in your packet. Please take about 90 seconds to just skim through that, focusing on the key learnings that we designed for each day. As you can see, this was a significant undertaking, and we also realized it had many moving parts and many days of teacher collaboration and learning. So, knowing that if we were going to launch this, we wanted this plan to be as successful as possible, we decided that before we launched, we should test it out first.
So what we did was we decided that we were going to test it on a small group of teachers that would go on a journey with us together, and that we would receive feedback along the way. We sent an email to the entire staff inviting teachers to come on this journey with us, to provide critical feedback, to tell us that worked, that didn't work, this was dumb, this was strong, this was clear. 35 teachers responded to that email. Those teachers ranged from kindergarten all the way to high school and everything in between. And they became what we call now our prototype teacher group. They experienced all 6 days of professional learning that was facilitated by our Cali leadership team, and they were instrumental in providing feedback to us, which we then took that feedback and actually acted on the feedback. When they said this didn't work or this doesn't make sense, then we acted on that. And the result was a stronger and clearer 6-day professional learning. At that point, since we had kind of a new product, and we had incorporated that learning, and we had revised our 6-day professional learning, we decided to do it one more time. So another email went out to all teachers to become our pilot group, and they received the improved 6 days of professional learning. We often ask for forgiveness of the first 35 because they got the first version, the first iteration. But they too, just like the prototype teachers, they made recommendations, they made feedback, and again, the 6 days were tweaked, edited, and made stronger one more time. All along, we now have a group of about 60 teachers that have been with us intimately, working with us, providing feedback, telling us how things are going. And we started to build the capacity of these two groups of teachers who had been testing these strategies in their classrooms with their kids. So when it was time to move to district-wide last year, right, hundreds of teachers, ranging from kindergarten to high school, those were the groups that we tapped into and we invited for them to experience and to be leaders amongst their colleagues and their peers. We brought them in, we focused on facilitation, we focused on opportunities for them to learn and to partner with some of their colleagues and to get ready for the launch. As a result, our teachers in Azusa Unified School District were the ones that delivered the district professional learning last year 3 days and this year day 1. It was a very proud moment for us that came with so many benefits, not only for the teacher leaders, but for their colleagues as well.
So as we began to implement this professional learning plan district-wide, we continued to incorporate feedback to inform our process. Feedback came in a variety of ways. Our written feedback on evaluation forms at the end of each day, but also written feedback in emails, oral feedback in conversation, and of course, just keeping our ears to the ground. Amongst all the positive feedback after days 1 through 3, we also started to realize 2 very significant things. First, the acronym CALI wasn't really meaning anything to staff and may have actually been causing some confusion. Like, what is CALI? How they were confusing the two. And then secondly, that in an attempt to understand and wrap their heads around what is CALI, all of this professional learning was being whittled down to think, pair, share. So we paused, we reflected, we continued to incorporate that feedback and revise as we move forward. So as I mentioned, the realization that CALI was causing some confusion. So CALI was the name of the professional learning network. Oh, thank you. Click. That catalyzed this work, but it was not really representative of the many components of the Azusa Unified School District professional learning plan. So to address this confusion around CALI, we stepped back. We knew we needed to change the name to better address and describe our collective work. And after a lot of thinking and discussing, we landed on the simple but accurate AUSD professional learning. Because as Dr. Mitchell said, this is just the way we do things in Azusa. So secondly, we had realized that CALI had become synonymous with think, pair, share. The vision all along was to model those effective instructional strategies during our professional learning and to highlight complex think, pair, share as one of many strategies that are really high leverage, high impact. However, what we ended up doing was maybe overemphasizing it, causing many people to think that this entire journey was just about complex think, pair, share. So it prompted us to rebrand our professional learning, to really refocus our attention on what we are now calling our success drivers. Very simple. 1, collaborative practices. 2, cognitive rigor. And 3, academic discourse. So yes, complex think, pair, share happens to be a high leverage strategy that has the potential to exemplify all of these drivers. But we really wanted to make sure to drive home the point that this is not the only strategy. Right? There are other strategies utilized in the classroom and in our professional learning that also have the potential to exemplify those drivers. Socratic seminar, listening circles, four-corner poster method, just to name a few. But the main point here is that the drivers, those collaborative practices, cognitive rigor, and academic discourse, those drivers are the critical elements for student success, not the strategies employed. So, we're going to spend some time digging into those drivers.
So if we can go into our packet, you will notice that there is a pink form. We're going to be taking some time right now to reflect on what we might already know about Think, Pair, Share. So there's no right or wrong answer at this time. You're going to have some time to write some notes in the think, in the pair, and the share. What do you know about think, pair, share? You have about 15 more seconds. Okay, so you might have had an opportunity just for a moment to write some initial ideas about think, about pair, and about share. You will be allowed to revise it, go back, take some things out, but I would like you to see a video first. So.
Think, Pair, Share is a learning strategy that promotes classroom participation, can be used at any age, and can be planned or impromptu. Think, Pair, Share is a great way to encourage higher-level class discussions by allowing students time to think and reflect beforehand. In order to introduce Think, Pair, Share into your own classroom, be sure to model the technique first with a volunteer. Allow students to ask questions at this time to ensure that they fully understand how it works. The strategy itself involves 3 steps. Step 1, think, begins with the teacher asking a higher order thinking question. Then, students are quiet for a minute or 2 so that each can think on their own about the question. The second step is pair. You may assign specific pairs, use elbow partners, or students may choose their own partners. Students will then share their thinking with their partners, discuss ideas, and ask questions. This should take about 2 to 5 minutes. The third step is share. Students now share their ideas with everyone in a class discussion. Allow students to choose who wants to share their thoughts, ideas, and questions with the whole class, in order to help all students feel comfortable and safe. There are many benefits to introducing Think, Pair, Share in your classroom. Silent think time improves the quality of student responses, while pairing and sharing build oral communication skills. In addition, many students feel safer and find it easier to share with one person rather than a whole group. Also, students can retain more information when they have the opportunity to reflect and discuss. In In sharing their ideas, students take ownership of their learning and negotiate meaning rather than relying solely on the teacher's authority. To help introduce Think, Pair, Share in your classroom, remember that classroom posters are a great way to remind students how the strategy works. You can also use worksheets to help keep your students organized. Good luck using Think, Pair, Share in your own classroom.
Now, for some of you, you wrote quite a bit on your pink sheet, so you might not have a lot of revisions, but maybe you came up with new information from the video. So we're going to take another minute where you will have an opportunity to write down anything else that you might have left out.
All right, so now we're going to move into a pair time. Since there are 5 of you, we will do one pair and a trio. You're going to have a chance to just discuss your ideas. Take about 90 seconds. Maybe share one thing that was new that you added or one question you have. Just take a little bit of time to process those ideas. You're just talking about your graphic organizer. Some of you already started. You're like, we're done. About 15 more seconds. Please thank your partners. And can we have someone share, we're going to ask someone to share out one idea from each column. So is there anyone who has something they'd like to share out about in the think column or the think concept?
I think it actually allows the student, just like us as adults, to think. I mean, if I'm thinking like a student, like a kid, I'm like, what am I going to get for Christmas, or what's going to be for my birthday, or where am I going to eat? If I'm thinking as a student, so I'm just gives them time to think.
Thank you for
Generally.
sharing. Yeah. Can I have someone share a pair thought?
Well, when you pair up, you're able to go ahead and process together. So being able to share with each other what each one is processing, and being able to collaborate in just what we think of, like, for example, like we were judging the program, we're like, wow, this is what we think of it, and what do you think? And so it was a good time to just process it together.
And what about the share?
So yeah, the share, it allows for the different conversations that happen among the student groups, where maybe you're engaging a student who may not volunteer and raise their hand to share that perspective, but still has a valuable perspective to share. those concepts and thoughts are then brought out to the larger group and included in the conversation.
Absolutely.
So what you just
Did we
experienced,
pass our test?
A's all around. So what you just experienced was a slimmed down example of what a collaborative practice is all about and what it might feel like and what it looks like. It is a practice and belief that when students collaborate with one another and with teachers and their peers, learning and understanding gets clearer and stronger. And when that happens, learning will increase. So Think, Pair, Share is only one collaborative practice, but there are so many, many more. And we have been incorporating other collaborative practices throughout our professional learning. So to move on, we're going to dig into the cognitive rigor.
So, as Vicki just mentioned, you get a chance to practice the collaborative practice, which is part of the number one of our success driver. So now we're going to talk about the cognitive rigor. So, as Atora mentioned earlier, we are going to make this engaging, so you're going to be doing another engaging activity. And this time, last time you worked with a partner, but this time we're going to ask you to get into 2 groups, and you kind of did that a little bit. So it's 5 of you, if we can have, again, 2 groups, 1 of 2 and 1 with 3. And then we'll tell you what your next steps will be. Groups. Okay? Very good. So in your triad or duo, you are going to review and you are going to retell the highlights of the popular fairy tale, Little Red Riding Hood. So we're going to give you maybe about a minute to go ahead and do that right now. So please retell and review the story of Little Red Riding Hood. Yes, with each other, yes. Mm-hmm.
Something's fishy. She has some questions.
Okay, time's up. Thank you.
Would you please locate in your packet the yellow handout that's titled the Cognitive Rigor Matrix? This is a framework that we use during professional learning that assists us in increasing the cognitive rigor of our instruction. On the vertical side would be the Bloom's taxonomy levels. This side determines the type of thinking that is needed to complete a task, solve a problem, and or answer a question. It's really the verb, the Bloom's. On the horizontal side is what's called the web depth of knowledge. And unlike the Bloom side, this side measures how deeply we have to understand the content to be able to successfully navigate it. How complex is the content, is the task, is the activity, is the question. That's what really determines the depth of knowledge level. The Cognitive Rigor Matrix is a tool that we use to assist us in applying rigor to learning activities. And it's available in all subject areas. This is primarily the work of Dr. Karen Hess. There's a Cognitive Rigor Matrix for language arts, for reading, for writing, for mathematics, science, world language, broad courses of study, CTE. And it's very specific to those content areas.
You also have in your packet a list of 13 possible questions that can be asked about the Little Red Riding Hood fairy tale. And then a third handout in your packet is a blank cognitive rigor matrix, CRM we like to say for short.
Okay, so now comes your next activity. So in your duo or triad, we are going to ask you to do a little bit of work with those 13 questions. Using your blank matrix, we would like for you to take a look at the 13 questions and see where would you plot those 13 questions on this CRM matrix. Now, you're not going to have time to do all 13, so you can skip around as you feel. So for example, if I look at let's say question number 2, who was the main character? So looking at the matrix, I would now need to decide where would I put number 2. As I go along the side on Bloom's taxonomy to the left, would it be under understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluate, or create? Let's say I think it might be understanding. Then I would also go across the top on the Webb's Bloom taxonomy, levels DOKs 1, 2, 3, and 4, and say to myself, perhaps this might be a DOK level 2. So then perhaps I would decide that question number 2 would go under understand, moving over into the DOK level box 2, and in that box, I would put the number 2. So I believe that question number 2, who was the main character, would qualify under Bloom's taxonomy as an understand question, and it would also qualify under Webb's DOK level 2 under skills and concepts. So it's kind of like using a
So that's interesting.
multiplication chart.
Because I would put it under,
Oh, that was just an example.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just an example. So in your duo or your triads, you will work together to figure out where could these 13 questions possibly go on the Bloom's taxonomy as well as the Webb's depth of knowledge. Yes. And you are welcome to use your handout as well to kind of give yourself an idea. So again, we'll give you a few minutes.
Okay.
You won't have time for all 13, but we'll give you some time to work on that.
Is that Remo?
Number 1.
A little bit of help is on the way. Dana is going to share with you the answers, and we'll give you another about a minute to kind of grapple with those answers and see if they match what you had. Okay, so we're going to stop you right now. And really quick, before we end this segment, I just would like to know, what ahas did you experience when you were doing this rigorous activity?
I would say just the nuance of complex thought behind some of the questions. So they're, I mean, relatively simple questions, but there's deep concepts behind them.
Anyone else would like to share? This is part of our share part.
Well, I think there's also, it's kind of fuzzy, right? So, I mean, we first had that number one question right where it is, right? And then as we read, you know, we thought, well, it could also fit under, Adrian, what did you have at level 3 under understanding, right? Because it's generalized. So there's a lot of space for people to interpret what depth of knowledge is.
Anyone else would like to share another aha from this activity? All right, well, thank you very much. And we are going to be moving into now our third success drivers, which has to do with our academic discourse. All right, so now we have been using what is called a red dot app that we have on our Chromebooks, which provides the opportunities for students to actually record their collaborative conversations. Then the students get a chance to go back and watch. Students can rate themselves. And it also provides a snapshot of the students' conversations for their teacher. So you, again, as Arturo mentioned, is very engaging, are going to get a chance to experience a red dot application conversation. So the first thing, I'm going to just quickly give you an overview of what you are going to be doing with the red dot, and then my partner Vicki is going to come up and give you more specific information. So here's what's going to happen. On the Chromebooks that we provided, you will be recording a 3-minute conversation around a rigorous question, a rigorous essential question that would be asked, which is, how do the success drivers impact student learning, which are the 3 drivers we've been discussing. As you are engaging in this conversation and discussion, we will provide you what's called a sentence stem, and again, Vicki will go into more details about what that is going to help you drive your conversation as you are being recorded. So right now, we are going to ask, again, our numbers are a little uneven, but should we do 2 groups? Yeah, so we'll stay with the 2 groups. If you want to keep your duo and your triad or do it a little different, you're more than welcome to. And I'm going to give you some instructions, and then support will be provided along the way if you should need help. In your group, one person will be in charge of hitting the start record button and posing the essential question to the group. Another person will be the timer, because they will be in charge of making sure your conversation is at least 3 minutes. And that person will also be the one to press the stop and upload button. So Vicki will go ahead and give you more information on your activity. And again, support will be provided from us along the way as you need it.
But before we start our conversation or we start recording, we need time to think about what we're going to say. What are we talking about? What is the question exactly? So if I'm going to refer you back to your packet, and when you go to your packet, you will notice that there's a green sheet. Okay? The green sheet looks like this. You will see that the essential question is, how do these success drivers impact student learning? So we've been presenting the 3 success drivers. So thoughts and ideas, how would the success drivers impact student learning? I'm going to give you some time right now to write down all your thoughts and ideas. So you're not having a conversation yet. You will use your notes to drive your conversation forward, but this is your protected think time. You have about 30 seconds left. So if you can please finish your thought, not your paragraph. So we want you to have an authentic conversation. And in order to have an authentic conversation, you are either building, you are clarifying, or you're filling a gap. If I can refer you to the white sheet behind the green, you will find that you have some question stems and sentence stems. If we go to the purple ink side, you will see build on and or challenge. When you're having your conversation, your driver is to build on each other's idea. So if at any time you find yourself at a loss, you can always go back to the purple side. Let's now turn it to what I call green, sage. Elaborate and clarify. Besides building, you can also elaborate or clarify an idea. And again, if you find yourself at a loss, you can go to this side for assistance to drive your conversation. So one more time, your conversation will be about how do the success drivers impact student learning. The person who starts the conversation will pose this question So they will press record, and they will ask this question for the video. Then people will continue talking. The timer probably has a cell phone and has decided to put a 3-minute timer. You want to make sure that at least 3 minutes go by before you stop the video. So the person who has the timer will then, when they see that the 3 minutes are up, will stop the video. Your question and notes are with you. Your sentence stems are with you. And you will produce a 3-minute video. Finish your sentence. Thank you. So typically in the classroom, what takes place now is that the students know that this video will automatically go to their drive. It will go to their Google Drive. And they have different rules. So the person who is the recorder, one of the first things they will do is share the video with the partners. And from there, they will, depending on the teacher in the classroom, for me, they upload it into Google Classroom and into a particular assignment. And then using a rubric, they evaluate their conversation, and they evaluate their academic language, and they evaluate whether they were having an authentic conversation or was it a parallel conversation. In other words, were they really building on each other's ideas, or were they just trying to read what they might have written 2 minutes before, and they're not really listening to each other? And that way, students take ownership over their own learning. They do not need the teacher to tell them what areas to focus on. They can clearly see for themselves what areas, and they can establish goals for themselves of what they would like to do. Today, you're not going to get an opportunity to review your videos because we are going to, I know, we're going to move on. But I just wanted to let you know that that is what would typically take place in the classroom. But I gave you an opportunity to think, the green sheet. I gave you an opportunity to share, or pair. So now I am at the share component. Are there some ahas that any of you would like to share?
I think it's a great concept because that's how I learn, and I'm very verbal. And being a verbal, that's how I get everything. I walk around talking to the fish just to do things and understand, and that's how I process. So for me, that would be great, or a student that is like that. So there you go. And a student who's shy, that at least gives them the opportunity to have just one-on-one with somebody and actually throw things and bring them out and go, oh, what a great idea. And maybe they'd be more apt to go forward and relate to the class because they'd feel that confidence.
I think it's also great because it allows students to, maybe they don't really know each other, don't speak to each other, but since you're in this group, you learn to work together. And it builds teamwork. And also Adrian and I just working together, I always learn something from him and vice versa. And I'm sure the students do the same thing, and I think it's really great.
Now that you've had a chance to not only see the drivers but experience them, our success drivers, we want to take a look at the impact on the student learning and teaching.
I have seen my students, they're just eager to learn from one another because they view it as the opportunity for them to learn from each other versus, learning from me or just getting new ideas, new insights. And I've also noticed their academic language they were able to retain more of that academic language and apply it in their writing.
It's actually kind of fun to have these conversations, like you get to talk to a partner about something, and then we get to go back and forth, and once we're finished, we get a deeper understanding. It could be easier. The question seems easier than when you first started.
Let go a little as a teacher. It doesn't mean it's easier. It actually means that you need to really be there and observe, but just be the facilitator and allow these kids to run, trip a little, show them how to get up, and have ownership, true ownership of what they're learning.
Talking to other partners is important so you can learn from each other and not get too distracted, so you can maybe be smart and smarter.
I know in my ELD classroom, any chance they have to discuss with other students is linguistic practice for them. Anytime they have to talk about what they read helps them to build their understanding. Things that they might not have picked up on, another student might have picked up on, and that might be the key to them understanding the purpose of the text.
It's kind of refreshing because in certain aspects you'd expect it to, for especially math, that it'd be just so like heavily like formulated, like you'd have to be so correct, and for you to be able to bounce off ideas and like different ways of solving problems, especially when certain problems get tough and you have to collaborate in order to solve for a problem, it becomes easier to like express your ideas and also like critique others for theirs and see if you're right or if they're right or if you're both right in different ways.
Recording what you like say helps your learning because like knowing me, I would forget what I said, so I could like go back to like my recording and then just remember what I said and like what my other partner said.
Oh, and that's why this happens, or oh, that makes sense with this, and oh, then they did this, and then I got a chance to witness that moment when that conversation was building, and they got to like with the content.
What I need during think time is that my partner has good details and that she doesn't just want to play around with me and just talk about some other things, and I want a partner that's like on topic. And that
The writing, with the talking about it, it actually helped me get more ideas into what I was writing.
The best part about talking to a partner is that you actually get to elaborate on what you get to write on. So it really helps you think of more ideas instead of just thinking, these are just basic thoughts. So when you're talking to your partner, you know that you could actually trust them for giving you good information, and that makes them like really friendly to you, and they could probably become your friend.
That's just a snapshot of some of the impact that this systemic approach is having in our district on teaching and learning. When we take a look at our trajectory over the past several years since we started implementing in 15-16, and we have seen a steady increase with not just our SBAC scores, but also our district assessments. So while the state seems to be plateauing, we're still on this upward trajectory. Does that mean that we're done? No. We still have a lot of work that we have to do and that we are doing, and certain subgroups that we are supporting throughout. Also, our district survey has shown an upward trajectory in terms of student responses and how they feel about engagement at school, and our teachers with implementing conversations, academic conversations, and these discourse that they're having with their peers. Parents are reporting greater satisfaction, as well as an increase in staff engagement and satisfaction in the value of their professional learning.
Our TOSAs are also an integral part of modeling the success drivers of collaborative practices, cognitive rigor, and academic discourse through all our professional learning opportunities in our district. We have job-embedded professional learning inquiry, and our teachers, our TOSAs also support professional learning communities at the site and district level as well. Our teachers and students, as you saw, are increasingly sharing their success stories with us. They share student videos with us all the time. We have hundreds of video samples, writing samples. They give us feedback. As Kimberly mentioned earlier, we do feedback forms after every professional learning day. I wanted to give you just a couple of examples of teachers reflecting on their learning as it relates to the drivers and the shifts that they're seeing in their classrooms. That's one of the questions that we ask teachers at the end of one of our professional learning days. And here are just a couple of representative statements that our teachers have written in the surveys. A second grade teacher said, "Collaborative conversations deepen content knowledge. My students are learning to ask good questions and clarifying their ideas." Another teacher said, "My students have higher levels of student engagement and motivation. Collaborative practices are applicable in all content areas. Working in collaboration with others makes us all better. Collaborative conversations improve academic language and increase understanding." And one of my favorites, My students' writing has improved greatly due to increased opportunities for discussion on my classroom.
I'll share one of my favorites. We had a high school teacher that almost tackled me to the ground, that wanted to share what had happened in their classroom. This teacher has been teaching for over 20 years, and she said that she was skeptical about releasing control, skeptical about classroom management and the noise level and all that, but started implementing some of these strategies. And she said that for the first time in over 20 years, this is a high school, the bell rang and the student said, "Miss, can we just finish this?" So that's one of my favorites in terms of the impact of student engagement and the level that they want to be able to be challenged and engaged. And so that's one of my favorite stories. In no way, shape, or form are we saying that because of this, SBAC and district assessments and the annual survey, that would be very difficult, right, to say what is it, because we have so many things going on. But we, based on what we see, what we hear, again, just teachers voluntarily just saying, "Oh my gosh, you have to see this," or I need to tell you about this, or "Come visit my classroom." Come visit my classroom, right? Come and see this magic that's happening in my classroom, has been awesome. And that's the obvious scope of the work, right? Learning and teaching. But we want to share some other, maybe not so obvious things.
We had a chance to share with the Gates Foundation what we're doing here, and it was tremendous. And one of the things that really came to light was this next aspect, and that is the aspect of systems change. The impact this work is having, our success drivers in these area of system is just tremendous. We have adopted these success drivers in our adult learning in other areas of our work. For example, our curriculum adoption is built around these success drivers. It's rigorous, it's collaborative, right? It has all of these components of our success drivers. Most recently was our science adoption. The work our TOSA team does with our professional learning at the sites, with grade levels or content, and even our work with just individual teachers, we embody these practices, all three of the drivers. And that doesn't mean that we just use all three all the time, but we called them drivers rather than pillars because at different times you may be needing one driver more than another, but they're all working like in a synergy.
Other examples of how we implement these success drivers are our monthly instructional leaders meetings, which is with our site administrators, where we are delivering content using these success drivers and modeling the learning. We have our PAC Plus, our Parent Advisory Committee. We have our high school student advisory group, where we also try to model and exemplify these success drivers. And we have lots of areas, lots of examples of how we are modeling and living these particular success drivers, and that we're continuously pushing ourselves to not only use them, but to model them and to think about how we can apply them in our adult learning. So that's one. Second, the success drivers have kind of served like a filter now, like a gauge. As we look at other components of the system that are trying to come into the system, to see where is the alignment, right? Is this going with the success drivers or is this going against the success drivers? So for example, other programs like SEAL and the middle school Kelly Reed's program, right? Those match up to our success drivers. And that creates harmony, and it creates a sense of not another thing, but how these things work together in harmony, not against each other. As a matter of fact, if we look at SEAL, because that's the one we mentioned right now, Think, Pair, Share is actually one of their signature strategies that when they're working with our teachers, that is one of the signature strategies. Our most recent curriculum adoptions, math, ELA, ELD, history, social studies, and now science, they all have components of these drivers built into the curriculum. Like, this is how the curriculum is delivered. And our TOSA team does an incredible job of highlighting and bringing to the surface those components for our teachers, right? Because this is new, right? And so they really work hard with their colleagues to kind of emphasize and focus the attention into those parts of our curriculum and those components of our curriculum that exemplify these drivers.
And the third impact on our system is one that's really near and dear to my heart, and that is the interpersonal nature of the work. And it is building and growing trust, not just amongst the staff, but for the whole community. And the littles and the kids, building community and having those conversations with diverse partners and being able to engage in that. It is building trust. It is building increased risk-taking, also among our teachers. You know, like our teachers, come into my classroom. I literally had a teacher call me on my cell phone over a weekend and say, can you come into my classroom? Can you help me with this? I mean, it's just incredible how we are shifting the mindset in this district to a district that is an inquiry district, right? It's not about gotcha. It's not about dog and pony show. It's actually real. It is real systemic change, and it's happening through our collaborative learning and our success drivers.
So because we have Callie, this is Ashley here from Callie. This is impromptu, so before we get to questions, I do want to give her some time to give you some honest feedback about the work that we have been doing, particularly in Azusa.
Good evening, everyone. Once again, thank you for my introduction. My name is Ashley Chung-Dooley. I'm with California Education Partners. I've had the opportunity to work with your team for the last year, and before my work in Ed Partners, I worked more so at the state and national level, and I've had the opportunity to work with almost all 50 state Department of Eds, as well as their territories, and have had the opportunity to work. I moved coasts to work with these folks. It has been an honor to work and spend the last 2 professional learning days with them. I've been with their first grade teachers as they built understanding together through text and evidence and research, made meaning for themselves, co-created lessons, became incredibly vulnerable and willing to share their classrooms and their kiddies, to try an activity, to see the growth of the conversations, the ahas, the ability to build upon each other, and make meaning for what's next. As this program is designed to do this with their own children, we've seen it, I've just seen it for the last couple PD days in the actions and voices of your teachers, which is really exciting. They have also been able to model what it means to really lead from the middle, lead from behind, and highlight teachers, highlight voices, and become a true continuous improvement team. In order to become a continuous improvement team, you have to try, be vulnerable and try, continuously listen, iterate, and improve. What Alicia was saying, the work is not done. It has created a foundation of what can be. And in order to have true systemic change, you really need instructional shifts, understanding the tools that need to move student voices, student action, student growth, but also understand how the system can really build upon and support that work. And so that is creating and removing barriers, creating opportunities to co-create and co-learn together, and become vulnerable and say, my kid is your kid too. Everyone in Azusa is everyone's kid. And how we can say that with confidence, that no matter what classroom you go to, what site you go to, you are having student and student interactions, being able to grow and share together. It's really exciting to see systemic change from the ground. So I'm happy to take any questions, but thank you so much for having me. So, thank you.
So today you got a snippet, a flyby. We can spend 8 hours probably talking about this and sharing examples. But we do want to end by opening it up to questions that you might have of any of the team members, or Ashley has made herself available as well.
I'll say one thing. So you said you could spend 8 hours, but I would say you could spend at least 6 days.
Yeah, true.
At least. No questions other than just wanting to communicate, just the gratitude. I find myself, as I'm going around and seeing different things, I mean, honestly, being a student here, almost jealous of just some of the experiences and some of the incredible things that are going on. But then I'm reminded that I have a daughter who's in there, and all the other kids that I know in the community. And so I'm grateful for these models and for these practices and your expertise and the way that you're leveraging your expertise, and not just keeping it to yourself, but to share it out so that great teachers can be even greater, to make that impact on the young people here in our community. And so just thank you for the work that you all are doing. Thank you for all of it.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for all your hard work, and also for allowing us to walk through and see what the students are doing in the classroom. I think it's good that we learn what they're learning. And it's true, it never ends here, but this is a good beginning. Because I really think that would allow the student to think and share, like we talked about, work together. And, I think their knowledge, their mind would expand more on this, share pair. And thank you all very much for it.
Okay, I had shared with Gabby, I had just spent 10 days with my grandchildren, and I have 2 3-year-olds and a 4-year-old. And if you look at 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, when they're interacting and figuring things out, they think share, pair, they think pair share. And I go, this is inherent on how they learn. So to add it, that's awesome. So thank you so much.
This was not 8 hours like Agent said, it was 6 days, but I know it was more than 6 days in planning, implementing, and trying to come together to put this all together. I see your hard work, and I appreciate your hard work, kind of like Agent too. I wish this was implemented when I was here in school, but I also have kids in the district, and I know they'll benefit from here. And the community, one thing, oh gosh, I forgot who said this, how this basically impacts our community, our children, and that to me was powerful. And just that alone, and how your team works together, and making this, and you say it's not perfect, we're still fine-tuning it, but we're seeing progress. And that to me is already a success. So keep it up, just keep doing what you're doing and keep improving it however you can. There's always room for improvement, but I'm so happy to see this happen here in our district. Thank you.
So I do actually have a couple questions, but before that, I'll just say I really appreciate this, and I'm glad that we've been able to experience something that we've done. And I just want to share something that I shared with Kimberly when we were talking. And if I saw the video, I would say that my feedback would be that there wasn't a lot of discussion. It was me just talking. I really appreciate that, to hear that we were able to go back and reflect upon the messaging that we're delivering, right? That we're actually, people were hearing a very narrow focus when that wasn't the intent. So I appreciate that we're now talking about success drivers and being very clear and articulate about that. And I think I really appreciate that. And I think that helps strengthen us as an organization. And I agree with what you've said, and Ashley talked about how we have a very strong foundation and framework now, right? And so my questions are really more around implementation. Right, so my questions are more about, there's 2 pieces. One, in terms of implementation, how are we monitoring and evaluating effectiveness and implementation? So that's my first question to you right now.
Yep. So our first 4 days were district-wide, basically student-free days. And they were in the classroom. We did have some homework for teachers to go and try and come back and talk about successes, hiccups, what was tough, what worked, what didn't work. But to that point, when we moved to days 5 and 6, and that's why Ashley was down here to witness that, we moved more towards application. And so without, I don't want to call it exactly a lesson study, but an inquiry model, where teachers got into teams, job-alike teams, to actually lesson plan, like what this looks like in the classroom. Then those groups, either by rock, paper, scissors or freely, they chose amongst themselves a classroom to go test this. And so they went with students, their own students, the other adults looking, the other adults taking note, and then coming out and debriefing that process. We are continuously asking that question of ourselves. So you heard a little bit from Vicki in terms of how are we gauging this. We've gone from rubrics to transcribing to learning from other districts what they are doing, but that's something that is a continuous journey that we haven't landed exactly, but we are testing and implementing some things. And so, for instance, the having students using a rubric, making sure that they are assessing how those conversations are, did I use academic language? Am I staying on topic? Am I building on others, other knowledge? So at the end of this year, with the exception of history, social studies, teachers, and TK? With the exception of those two groups, every single teacher is going to have the opportunity to go through a day 5 and 6 through this inquiry, lesson study-ish type of model, so that they can see good implementation and application.
So, and I appreciate that, but again, I mean, that's, well, I want to say, so I appreciate that. I think that's really important. I also want to understand how are we, I mean, teachers are in classrooms 180 days a year, right? So what are we doing to measure and evaluate and support the focus on these success drivers and the day-to-day in classrooms? And so then not only just that piece, but then also sort of measuring to figure out how are we truly changing systems, right? I think we've done you have a really strong foundation, especially with the people that have jumped in head first. They've dived in. They're really excited. They're doing the work right. And questions that I have are how widespread is this, right? How much have all of our teachers bought into this? Is it shifting cultures?
I would say that it's definitely shifting cultures. Again, when teachers open up their classrooms to invite us to come in, when teachers send us evidence of what's happening in their classroom in terms of their content, when we are able to tell teachers, we goofed this, right? We're not going to talk about CTPS anymore, right? We goofed this. This is how we're going to do that. And we show that vulnerability, and we show the learning, and we show that we can keep our ear to the ground, and based on data, make instructional decisions. I think that it's definitely shifting. Now, like anything, I would say that we're on a continuum. And so there are early adopters, and you just say one time or they watch one video, and tomorrow they are jamming, right? And they are doing this. And there are others who are going to take a little bit longer. But as we build relationships as our TOSAs and we're implementing new content, and they are working with that, we have school sites that have used this as a focus. So we are doing a series, professional learning series at the sites. Other schools, department levels, we are pushing into their PLCs and working on PLCs. And so what brings me joy and pride is that I see the needle moving, and it's not because we are saying you must move the needle, but it's this feeling that we're all moving together, we're all moving with this energy. But to your point, We do have to land, and Kelly will attest to this. We have signed up for 2 more years. They graciously took us back. And these next 2 years are going to be focusing specifically on data sets and data points to say, is this working? And we just started that work once. We've only had one convening to kind of, is it 1 or 2 already? One convening to start that particular work of saying, is this actually causing a difference? And we just started that journey this year, and we have 1 more year next year.
But I think that's great. I mean, I know you've already heard me say this, right? Like, we are going to be adopting a new LCAP this year with our goals, right? And while I know we're going to have goals around test scores, because that's what the state really is mandating, I really want to be able to be able at the board level to be able to say, these are the goals we have in terms of implementation of our success drivers, and this is how we're going to monitor the implementation, or this is how we're going to be able to demonstrate that we are that implementation, whatever the depth of implementation is. And so that's what I think what I'm really asking, because ultimately at a board, right, this is a great exercise, but when we look at information, we're looking at that much more higher level systems data, so the data, and what's appropriate data. I do also want to make it really clear, right, I want to encourage in continuous learning, so this is not about gotcha, this is not even about, we may pick measurements and find out that this is not really helping us move things, right? And so I think as a board, we have to be open to saying, okay, this is a learning process, and we know things may change, but we do need to have some measures. And so I think that's the message. And then the other piece that I just wanted to bring up, right, I think this is very important, but it's all very focused on instructional strategies, right? And I think this other piece around socio-emotional learning, relationships, how we connect, how we build mutual respect with students and family is a really critical piece. And I'm really interested to hear moving forward how that work and those pieces are being embedded in the work that we do.
Absolutely. And just if I may, because you reminded me of something, we are at school sites all the time, and so we happen to be walking at a school site unannounced just to see how things are going, and we asked where the principal was, and they said they're in the cafeteria doing a coffee with the principal, and we walked into the cafeteria, and they were having their parents run through a collaborative practice to show them and to model for them what their kids are doing in the classroom, and so that was pretty cool.
So again, thank you. I just really want to appreciate all the work you do. I know, as many of you may know, I'm engaged a lot at the state level, so I'll let you know, so you know we're part of, this is connected to like the work that we're doing with the Community Engagement Initiative, right? So I'll just tell you, last week, I was getting texts, and people were talking to me about how great you all did presenting to the other members of that Community Engagement Initiative. So I am very proud of all the work that you guys do, because it's very thoughtful, it's very deep, and it really is having an impact.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to move on. That was the study session portion of our meeting, and we do have some items that we have to actually take action on. So we're going to move on to the action items. Yes, Debbie? Not yet. Yeah, so now we're on item 8.1. We're going to appoint a board representative to the Azusa Parks and Rec Commission.
I want to motion and recommend Adrian Greer for the board representative to the Parks and Recreation Commission.
Second.
All right, there's been a motion and a second to appoint Adrian Greer. Any discussion?
I think he would be great for that job.
I second that motion.
I think so. Okay, if seeing no other discussion, please place your votes. The motion passes 5-0. Moving on, we have the consent calendar. All items under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be acted in one motion unless anybody wishes to pull an item. So I will now request a motion to approve all items unless somebody wishes to pull an item.
Yeah, I'd like to pull 9.4.
Okay, anything else? Okay, is that a motion?
Yes, motion to approve all but 9.4.
Is there a second?
A second.
Motion by Adrian Greer, seconded by Jerry Byrnes-Wilkel to approve the consent calendar with the removal of 9.4. Any discussion? Place your votes, please. Motion passes 5-0. Moving on, we'll move to item 10.1, which used to be 9.4. Consider approval of consulting firm College Bridge, Resolution 19-2017. Adrian?
Yeah, so I guess a couple thoughts. As we have different consultants that we have working with us, I know that we talked about this, about consultants at previous meetings. I think it's important that when we bring someone on, that they are able to communicate to us the target of what they are going to produce as far as why we are contracting them, as well as identifying a means of measuring. It's even going back, Shailene, to what you were describing moments ago. I think, how do we look at that across the district with the work that we're doing? So like this looks like great work, but even as I look at, the specific objectives that providing coaching to support administrator for Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium to use interim comprehensive assessments to gather formative data in English and mathematics to target student needs. This is great. I mean, it sounds great. It makes me think about when I work with students in an after-school setting, and when we're talking about establishing goals, they'll sometimes say, my goal is to do better in school. And we'll talk to them about, but what specifically? Is there a GPA that they're aiming for? Is there a grade in the class? What specifically, and what methods can we put in place, and how do we measure? When the report card comes out, did you hit that goal or not? Are you 80% there? And I guess I'd like to have a conversation on a board level. Maybe we can bring it back at a future time on a standard. Maybe if we need to adjust the preliminary contract agreement, but I would just like to more clearly understand when we have consultants that are coming and when we are contracting these consultants, that they're able to clearly articulate and communicate what they are going to do for the district, and that we have a means of measuring so that when we are voting up here, especially when we're bringing someone back on a second, third, fourth, 10th year, that we're able to look and track their progress and not just say that things have gotten better. What specifically?
So do you have a question about this consultant?
I guess not. It's really about our consultants in general. Again, I don't know much about this consultant. I trust that that this person would do great work. But how do we engage all consultants, regardless of who they are, so that there's a standard process? So I guess my question is, how do we as a district adopt a process to formally communicate what our expectations are when consultants are brought to us as a board to help us make an informed decision when we are approving contracts?
So let me ask a question, Arturo. So are they going to be using the interim assessments that are provided by Smarter Balance?
That is correct.
So what is the purpose of bringing in a consultant to do trainings around using the assessments?
I'll toss it over to Mr. Ronquillo, but I will begin by saying that it's about the process. So it's about not just the administration, but the analysis, the calibration, the scoring, the understanding of the level of cognition that's needed for the assessment, because this is the interim, like the full-blown one. It gives them that opportunity, but I'll let Mr. Ronquillo fill in.
Yes, thank you. And Mr. Greer, great questions, and I appreciate the thoughtfulness around the topic of consultants in general. I have been interacting with Dr. Gomez regarding this particular request for Azusa High School, and he shared that this is the second year of the two to really provide work with this consultant group. And the goal is that next year, the administration and teachers will be able to do this process on their own. And it's a full-blown SBAC experience for students that really mimics the administration of the test, but it goes much further than that, and it's what Arturo was sharing, wherein the teachers are working with, are calibrating their scoring and really scoring at a level that allows them to provide meaningful feedback and also inform their practice that they do independently and also, more importantly, through the professional learning community process. So that process will be taken off on its own after this school year, but the purpose of this consultant agreement was to really bring to speed the teachers that didn't have an opportunity to participate last year in this training.
And it's only Azusa High School?
Yes.
I guess, so just to be clear, my questioning is not, so thank you for the detail. I spoke with Mark earlier, and he was able to give some of the details, so thank you. So my question is about consultants, period, I suppose. And so can we, what is a step, what is a process in which we can, how do we go about that? Do we need to, is there something that that staff can put together to present, a format that presents this information on the front end and on the back end, so that there's a pre and post evaluation when we have consultants that are coming in? Is that something that we need to discuss here? Do we have ad hoc folks from us that go and have the conversation? I'm not sure what the process is, but as we're getting consultants that are coming, I would like more information and I would like more data to approve the different contracts that are coming in.
So, I mean, the reason I asked Arturo the purpose, right, is because there are different purposes for different types of consultants, right? So this person is coming in to give a training in how to use a system that they'll be using moving forward, right? So I'm not I think the evaluation would probably be an administrative determination of how it's impacted the work of the teachers or whoever it is administering the assessment and how it's used by the teachers. So, I mean, that's a reasonable thing for you to ask to come back and report, and I think the agreement says they're going to come back and report the findings to the board, but that's not sufficient for you?
No, I guess that's a good step, but no, I don't think it's sufficient. I guess my questioning is, how can we have some data sets? So for example, if we're saying that the goal is to train teachers so that they are then able to do this, so the goal, so then to communicate in the contract that this is a one-year contract for the purposes of these trainings, so that by year 2 they can pull out it. So how do we measure it? By the educator's ability to not need the consultant. So just the specifics around, so we can measure, are we along the way? What are we getting for the monies that we are investing? And again, it's not about this consultant, although we can use this as a case study or a metaphor. It's about consultants, period. So I don't doubt that this is a worthwhile or a valuable investment. I just think that because it is a worthwhile and valuable investment, we can find a way to indicate that outside of merely anecdotal stories or circumstances shared out.
So basically what you're asking is to see if we can get this form to be more detailed, so when we do approve a consultant, regardless where they are, it will have more information on it for us so that we can make a more informed decision.
Potentially, I guess this is where I want to be careful and not get in the... I recognize the difficulty of my request, because I'm asking something, but then I'm not there to, it's not my role necessarily to develop that form. So it could be done with the changing of a form, or if there's a standard evaluation. I think that there are different ways to go about this, but my question is, how can we as a board be provided with more information on the front end and more information on the back end, so that when we are voting for consultants, it's based on the anecdotal stories that come, which are valuable, but also the data.
So I'm just going to push back a little bit, because I think I agree with you that it can't hurt us to be clear from the outset what the intended outcomes are and how we're going to measure them, right? But I do think that I would just caution us as a board to think that everything has qualitative data that can tell you something about it, right? Quantitative data. Because, in this kind of case, right, this is probably much more a qualitative analysis of, how are people using what the training they received. And so I'm just I'm telling you, what my suggestion to you is, for us as a board, that just us be very careful about what kind of information, we can use the word data if you want, we ask for, because we might be able to do a pre and post survey about a teacher's, how they feel about using the system, but is that really telling us, are they using it well? Because that's just a self-assessment of that teacher in terms of how well they're using a system.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and just share a little bit. I think it's really important that I agree with Jerry here that this is just kind of vague. And when we're hiring consultants, I know in other districts, they ask a lot more in the RFP. Board members are able to, okay, this is what what their proposal is what they're going to implement, this is going to be their objective, this is going to be their outcome. And at the end, consultants are, required to write even a paragraph, even if there's no quantitative data, they're required to give just a paragraph or some type of synopsis of what happened, not necessarily ask the teachers or administration, but therefore just be able to, okay, this is what, beginning, middle, and end, and just to finish up the process. So, for example, next year, if one of us is not here, the next school board member can read that and say, you know what, this is what they did, I'm going to go ahead and approve it. And so I feel the same way. I don't want to vote blindly. Well, I don't know what they've done. I don't know what this is for. I mean, it says here, but what exactly, from this consultant, like, from their words, like, what was the exit, their proposal, and how did it end? And the objective, their proposal, their objective, did they meet it, and so forth. And so that's just my 2 cents there.
Well,
For it to be a little more, just to be a little more clear, so that way, I know what I'm.
and I understand what you're saying. I do agree, but myself, as a board member, when I have a question regarding a consultant, a program, or an employee, I need to talk to Dr. Kaminsky or curriculum, whoever it pertains to, so I could be more informed when I am going to vote on something, and I'm clear to know who they are, where they came from, and this is what I usually do. But you're saying you want it in writing, and is that what I'm getting? Or
And I don't think it's not an unreasonable request, right? And I know we've had a discussion about this, right? And I think the message for administration is really to let's be more thoughtful or I shouldn't say it that way. Let's put more information in terms of what are the intended outcomes. I see some of them here, but also how we're going to measure, right? And how we anticipate using the consultants. Because I also hear you concerns about whether this is ongoing, right? Or whether, is this a purpose to build capacity internally so that we don't need to use a consultant?
And one other thing, Yolanda, so that's one way.
You could do both.
Right, and that's what I say. So one way to go about it is to inquire and to ask questions every time something comes up, and that's one way to approach it. What I'm suggesting is kind of a systems approach to it, where there are, if whether it's I don't want to tell or say how it is, but a way to gather more information, whether it's adjusting the form or whether it's what you were suggesting, Gabriella, with I don't want to say what the specifics are, but I just know that for me it would be valuable to have more data and more information on the front end when we're seeing something first, and then on the back end. So this was a second year. This is not a new. So even things like that would be valuable to know that this is a second year, and these were the results from last year. Here's what we're so just a bit more information would be helpful for me to make an informed vote.
Quick question. It says here, new employment of this consultant. So we haven't used this consultant, but we've used this company, correct? Yes.
This is our second year using this consultant.
Because it says here, new employment of this consultant.
I believe it's probably new employment for this.
That was a point of confusion when I interacted with Dr. Gomez. He did share that this is the second year working with this company on this process. And as an added point, I was taking notes as to the request, and I think we could put together a revised form that will be able to get information that the board is requesting, with the understanding that not all information can be quantified, but we'll certainly make an attempt to ask for that information so that we could measure at the back end, as you're describing, whether or not we reach those goals.
And even, since they are, it's a second year, how did they do the first year? What data do we have that they're working out good for us, right? And it'd be good for us to know that. And even if they're new, where they come from, what references do they have that we can look at and follow to make the proper decision on voting?
Very good points. Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Adrian Greer, seconded by Yolanda Rodriguez Peña. Any more discussion? Seeing none, place your votes, please. Motion passes 5-0. Moving on, we have Section 11, Human Resources. We have first item 11.1, Azusa Unified School District Sunshining Proposal with Azusa Educators Information. This is an information item only. That's it. Or do you want to just open the public hearing? Did you want to say something, or?
I can provide some information. So this is pursuant our Government Code 3547, where we have to make public parts of the contract that we'll be negotiating, and it is required by statute that we give the public an opportunity to speak to the board and share their positions as to the parts of the contract that will be negotiated. It is a three-part process. The first part is this first point wherein we are sharing the proposal. The second part is the hearing, and then the third part is the action that the Board of Education will take.
All right, so with that, I'll move on to item 11.2, and I will open the public hearing. The public hearing on the collective bargaining agreement proposal for negotiation between the Azusa Unified School District and the Azusa Educators Association district proposal. The public hearing is now open. Anybody wishing to address the board regarding this sunshining proposal, now would be the time to come to the podium. Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
There's a motion by Gabriela Arellanes, seconded by Jerry Bibles-Vogel to close the public hearing. Any more discussion? Place your votes, please. Motion passes 5-0. Moving on, we have item 11.3, Board of Education adoption of the district's collective bargaining proposal for the 2019-2020 fiscal year negotiations. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve 11.3.
Second?
There's a motion by Yolanda Rodriguez Peña, seconded by Gabriela Arellanes. Any discussion? Seeing none, place your votes, please. Motion passes 5-0. Moving on, we have an item 11.4, approve the 2019-2022 agreement between the Azusa Unified School District and the Azusa Educators Association, CTA-NEA. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve 11.4.
I'll second.
Motion by Adrian Greer, seconded by Jerry Bibles-Vogel. Any discussion? Seeing none, place your votes, please. Motion passes 5-0. Moving on to Business and Finance, we have item 12.1, approve agreement with the Azusa Unified School District for professional library services. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion?
Just like explanation.
Yes, thank you. Actually, I'm very happy to report this partnership with the City of Azusa with regards to library services. So a bit of background, it is required that districts have a librarian that helps with library services, and districts often fulfill this need through hiring a credentialed librarian. That could be cost prohibitive for smaller districts, so it is not uncommon to enter into a partnership with the city library or county library to receive these services. So it not only strengthens our partnership with the city, but it also provides a way of having library services for our teacher teachers and students of the district. And I'd like to thank Lika Juarez, who was very, very instrumental with helping move this along. So, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? No? All right, great partnership. Let's place your votes, please. Do we have a motion already? Motion passes 5-0. Moving on, we have item 12.2, approve agreement with Remax Optima to provide real estate services.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes. So I'm extremely uncomfortable with this particular item. It feels, it does to me feel a bit rushed. That may be due to just kind of communication along the process. So as far as I kind of understand, I mean, kind of finding out about this on November 1st to vote on November 5th for a contract that extends over the course of 3 years. And there are just a couple things within this contract that just give me reason for concern. So one, again, it's a 3-year contract where we're to bring someone on who will not only provide consultancy to us as a district for surplus properties, but also that same consultant then is in the position to be a real estate agent who there are percentages that are broken down. So 2% for at least 1.5 if there's one property, 1.1 if there's more than one property, and so I think that role being on one person as opposed to being split up onto 2 people creates a bit of a conflict of interest when we are receiving consulting from that particular agent. As well as I think as we're having a conversation about this, it feels a bit of cart before the horse in that I would be really interested in hearing some really innovative solutions to find some ways to leverage surplus properties in such a way that it can create revenue streams for the district as opposed to one-time sales of property or whatnot. And I feel like that's a conversation that I would have hoped that we would have had as a board to kind of have an understanding of a direction that we're wanting to go in prior to someone kind of coming in, because I think that will help us to shape and frame who we would want to bring in to provide some of that consultancy to us, as well as maybe separating those 2 roles so it's not the same person who's consulting as well as being our real estate agent. And then for the duration of a 3-year term, there's just a lot of elements on here that just make me that just give me reason for concern. I know that one of the questions I had is what is the experience that this real estate agent would have with some of these innovative solutions, and kind of the response is, well, the process is first vote to approve, and then after we vote to approve, then we can have the conversation with them about what they can do. But I'd like to have the conversation and understanding on what they can do prior to making the vote. So I'm uncomfortable with moving forward with this particular item.
Any other, you wanted to speak?
Sure. So we do have a few options. We did fly an RFQ, which is a request for proposals for ideas from real estate experts. I also am currently in the CASH Leadership Academy, which is the Coalition for Adequate School Housing, which is paired well with the time that we're in, because I have kind of the experts in the room at my hand. And this is a new kind of industry of what to do with surplus property, because right now, many districts around the state have surplus property and are trying to figure out the best way to maximize, as Adrian said, the potential for the property. The idea here is that we flew this. We had 2 very different proposals that were submitted. The one that was selected was because he had the most experience on both sides. One, advising school districts on what to do with property, and then 2, by far the most experience in all 3 options, in lease options, on property exchange ideas, and on straight sales. So, which are really the only three options other than just waiting and seeing, right? Just leaving the property vacant and unused. So those are the expertise that he brings. I hope that I could mitigate any inherent risk in using the same consultant for both, using the experts that I'm working with through the Cash Leadership Academy to make sure that everything is run through that group of experts. But if we were to separate this into two separate consultants or two separate agreements, that comes with an additional cost. So typically, that would look like a consultant agreement specifically to advise us on recommendations for values of property, potential property reuse, and there would be an hourly wage associated with that. That would be similar to what we pay for legal, which is in the range of $150 to $200 an hour. And so those costs would be added on top of whatever we're doing with the property, which would be something that we should consider as the pros and cons of separating out the agreement or the process into two steps or two separate agreements and doing it with one. The individual that was selected through the RFQ process has extensive experience, very recent experience in Covina and Glendale in doing really innovative ideas with properties. So it would be great to have him on that consultant end, but he also has the most experience on actually selling or leasing or property reuse out of the experts that I was able to get a hold of. So it would be hard to put him in which one I would want him in as step one, just because he is the expert.
Yeah, so I guess my concern is, so the vote that's before us right now is to make that decision right now for a contract that extends over the course of the next 3 years. And it sounds to me like there's maybe some more discussion that we could have and that we should have at a board level before locking into a 3-year contract such as this.
We can do a few things with the contract. One, if we are unhappy with the services, we can exit with a notice letting them know that we're unhappy, and then we can exit at any time as long as we're not in a transaction that's in the contract. Or we could shorten the length of this contract, and I've spoken to him, and he is okay with that and coming back at a later time. So either of those would work.
What you just described now, so Adrian, would it be okay like to do a year to year and take like every year renew this contract?
So I'll say what I would prefer that we do is to have a conversation about some of these things, talking about some of these options, even describing and having a conversation about lease, sale, or exchange, and create what some creative options for a sustainable revenue streams would look like while still retaining property. Looking at some of those options and having a conversation so that that will help us to decide if this is the appropriate consultant for us to contract based on the preferences or the direction that we'd be moving in.
Well, would you prefer to do something to the effect of, say, table this and have a small presentation given to us by the consultant or by the person?
By the consultant, even staff. I think that there's more information that could come from staff, even on the front end, or the consultant. 100% yes. I think that would.
And that would make you more comfortable.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
And if we want to do that, you have to change the motion.
So then substitute.
Well, no, I mean, she can just, you made the motion, Gabby. You can just change your motion.
I'm going to go ahead and change my motion for item 12.2
12.2.
12.2 to
Table the
to
motion.
table this motion.
I second that.
And you seconded, so did you second the first motion?
I
No,
did not.
Then it has to be the same person who seconded it. What? I don't know who it was. It was Jerry. Okay, so now we're tabling this. Okay, so the motion to table it, and then let's just give clear direction, so at the next board meeting, right, we'll have a presentation on so that the board can understand what are some of the options out there. I think, are you guys comfortable deferring to the staff, whether it's themselves and the consultant
Yeah,
or the
absolutely.
consultant? I do want to say that I would be very uncomfortable entering an agreement with somebody who's not willing to come to the board and have a conversation with us before we approve a contract. So I would take that into consideration as you have a conversation with him.
He is willing to come to the board. We had that, he was going to come earlier, but we had a change of plans just with the focus of this board meeting.
So the other just question I have, again, to Adrian's point about timeline, this agreement has a date of August 19th. So I just want to understand, and that even precedes the date of your interviews, right, which was October 21st. So I need clarity about,
If it says August 19th, it should say November 6th.
well, it says August 19th, the one I'm looking at.
Not sure.
On top, it says, the initial date, yes, the date of agreement is 11/6, but the date of, you have,
There's actually several August dates.
right, August 19th
25th,
several times.
August 25th and August 19th.
So it also begs the question, why do we have agreements that are predated to the actual RFP process? So it'd be good to clarify that at the next, in between now and the next board meeting. Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Place your votes, please.
So we're voting to table this
Table it,
item.
yeah. Motion passes 5-0. Moving on, we have item 12.3, authorize the sale of personal property and calling for bids, resolution 192018.
Make a motion to approve 12.3.
Second that.
There's a motion by Yolanda Rodriguez Peña, seconded by Adrian Greer. Any discussion? Okay, place your votes, please. Motion passes 5-0. And with that, our agenda is exhausted, and we are now adjourned at 9:07. Thank you very much.